I'm Louise Fletcher and I help artists to find their own unique creative voice. Today I want to share another sketchbook secret. So last week I shared how I store ideas in a sketchbook, and this week I want to share with you my colour mixing approach in sketchbooks. Now I've had several approaches to this, tried several things, and I found the one I like best. So let me go show you. When I first started out I kept colour sketchbook. This is the very one. And I would write down the names of the colours I was working with and just practice my mixing in here. But what I found about this was it got a bit lost. I put it back on the shelf and then I wouldn't look at it again. It was great for the practice and the learning, but not so great for reference. Next, I tried things like this. I don't actually have many of these left now, but I had these up on my studio walls. Problem with that is I don't actually have a lot of studio wall space that isn't painting space, and I like pinning up studies and things that inspire me, so these were taking up all the wall space. Then I came up with this. So I make my own little Concertina books. And by the way, if any of this is of interest to you, I cover colour and all sorts of things, composition, tone, and having fun and mindset, and basically everything you need to know to paint amazing, unique artwork in my annual course, Find Your Joy, which currently we're collecting names on the waiting list, but the link for that is below this video, with this video somewhere if you're interested. But anyway, then I would make these little books. So the benefit of these is I can fold them up, put them on my shelf if I want to. When I'm working on a specific colour palette or with a specific colour palette, I could pin this up on my studio wall and it doesn't take as much space up because it's long and thin, so it would just hang down. So then I came up with these little things. So I would buy these sets of index cards on Amazon or in stationery shops, and they come with these rings. And I would then paint my colour swatches from a particular palette onto these. I've made a video about this on YouTube before. Just look up colour mixing on my channel. And then I'd mark the colours that I was using. And the benefit of this is you can hold this colour up against your painting and see how it's going to look in the place that you want to put it. So I found that helpful for editing paintings. But once again, as with the sketchbook, the rest of the time these are hidden away and they tended to get lost. I'd have them lined up on, or I do have them lined up on my studio bookshelf, but I rarely pulled one out to refer to. And that is when I finally landed on the solution that I like best. And so we come on to my current iteration and what I use currently. And you might say, but that's just a sketchbook. That's going back to this, but it isn't. It's the best of all worlds. What happens is I choose some colours to experiment with. I daub them onto the sketchbook so that I know what they are. So I've got fluorescent orange, fluorescent green, and yellow. Always do this. So I mark a page, I write down the name of the colour, and I put a stroke of paint across. That tells me how transparent the colours are. In this case, they're all transparent, and this means that until I add white or black, they're not going to be opaque. They're not going to cover over what's underneath. That's important to know when you're working with a palette. Now, later on, if I introduce another colour, I will add it on here, and I will add it on the spine so that I know. I then do a little bit of what I showed you in the other book, where I'm just mixing up colours just to get an idea of what's possible. But then, and this is the important part, I get lots of small pieces of paper and I start playing with the colour to make actual abstract studies. And these are not meant to be compositions for paintings. These are colour explorations. So I'm seeing what happens when the white's next to that orange? What happens when the orange is next to the brown that's made up of orange? How does it look when that brown's next to this murky green? And I'm checking what I like and what I don't. When is it too much bright colour for me, and when is it just the right amount? When is it too neutral, and when is it just the right amount? And just playing with the colour and seeing what looks good, so that I know now that I love this green against this brown. And these small pieces of paper don't go right into the sketchbook. These go on my studio wall while I'm working on the painting. So they are my visual inspiration for what I'm actually working on. And so therefore they're not buried away in a book until later. And here you can see I brought in some pink as an experiment. I don't like it. I brought in a magenta and mixed a pink. So if I'd liked that, then the magenta would have gone on the spine here as well, and I would have brought it into more studies, but I decided it was just a little bit too sickly for me. I started then to play with going darker, so mixing up really rich dark greens and browns from the fluorescent green and orange, not bringing anything else in. What happens when they get darker? This one I really like, and I noticed that I like this pale yellow, but it's too much here, and I like it set against the black and the neutral. I don't like it set against the orange. So it's when these are all pinned up, they're like a reference library for me as I work. So whereas with these, I have to drag them out and hold them up to the painting, and if I was using this, I have to have my sketchbook out to show me what's possible. Here, they're surrounding me. They're taking up studio wall space, but they're also giving me compositional ideas and paint application ideas. That's a lovely muted beige that I got from it that I really liked. Really liked this one because it's so much desaturated colour and neutral with the pop of the orange. So I'm also noticing, right, is that too much bright colour for me? Yes, it is. It's just too much for me and my preferences, but that feels much more me. This feels much more me in terms of the desaturated colour and the neutrals that I've mixed up. And then these beautiful pops of this bright green and this bright orange. And now I've taken it into, I started playing with the neutrals and the desaturation. And this for me is too cool, too neutral. I'm much happier with something with these little pops of warmth. So that's good to know. And then I've just begun an exploration of the greens I can get from the palette. This is only touching the tip of the iceberg when you look here and see all the range of possibilities. And that's the last page that I've done so far. When I'm happily working away and maybe I've moved past that palette for the time being and I need wall space, I will put them then into the sketchbook. But more might spring up, and this sketchbook will be always open while I'm working, and then more of the studies will go up on the wall to where I'll have made space for them. And maybe I'll be exploring greens for a while. Maybe I'll be exploring neutrals. Maybe I'll start playing with this idea of neutrals and desaturated colour with just little bits of bright colour. I could do a whole series of studies just on that. And then when I'm done with it, they'll go in the book too. And what I like about this is it gives me a reference library of my colours and a record of what I've explored. But it also, like I say, gives me ideas for compositions, and I get another lovely sketchbook, and I love my sketchbooks. This sketchbook, by the way, is a Sea White A5 travel journal. I think the main thing with colour mixing is to find a way of working with colour that you enjoy, because if you can enjoy mixing colours and experimenting, you can gain so much mastery over your artwork. You can basically know how to mix any colour that you see, but it does take practice, so you've got to find something that feels fun. Let me know in the comments how you approach colour mixing and whether you keep a record of your colours, and if so, how you do it. And if you want to hear from me regularly and never miss a video, you can sign up below this video for my newsletter, and you can always get notified when I publish anything anywhere. Okay, see you next time. Bye.